Hey everyone, and welcome to This Explainer. Today we're unpacking a really fascinating and honestly incredibly complex geopolitical situation. We're looking at the stark disconnect between official political claims and, well, the actual reality on the ground. Okay, let's just dive right into this. We're examining the intense situation surrounding the US naval blockade on Iran. Now, when you hear the official narrative, it sounds like an immediate, devastating blow, but when you look closely at leaked intelligence and hard maritime data, a completely different picture emerges.
And it really brings us to this absolutely crucial, high-stakes question. Is the US naval blockade on Iran actually working? We're going to uncover the truth today by contrasting the official statements coming right out of Washington with leaked CIA intelligence assessments and the actual, verifiable movement of ships out at sea. So what happens when a public narrative collides head-on with covert data? Let's find out.
All right, Section 1, the blockade strategy.
Section 2, the 3-day ultimatum.
So to really understand the reality here, we first need to understand the plan. The U.S. naval blockade targets Iranian ports across the strategically vital Strait of Hormuz. Announced by President Donald Trump on April 12th, this was designed as a super aggressive pressure campaign to completely choke off Iran's primary source of revenue, which is its crude oil exports. And the rhetoric surrounding this strategy, it escalated incredibly fast. President Trump issued a startling ultimatum, stating that Iran had just 3 days before its oil pipelines would literally explode from within. I mean, think about this quote for a second. He claimed that the blockade would create catastrophic mechanical stress, triggering spontaneous underground explosions in Iran's oil infrastructure. He even warned of permanent damage if the oil flow wasn't restored. This was the public narrative, right? A system pushed to the absolute brink of physical destruction within 72 hours.
But hold on, Section 3, intelligence tells another story. Notice the sheer scale of the disconnect here. On the one hand, you have the official stance, just 3 days until total infrastructure failure. But on the other hand, you have the leaked May 7th CIA assessment, which concluded that Iran could actually withstand the blockade for 90 to 120 days. And actually, officials familiar with the intelligence noted Iran could potentially endure it for an even longer period. This wasn't just, a slight miscalculation. The intelligence reality completely contradicted the official political narrative of an immediate catastrophic collapse. So how exactly did the CIA believe Iran would survive this? Well, the leak highlighted a few very specific strategies. The assessment found that Iran avoids immediate economic collapse primarily by relying heavily on its existing crude stockpiles. Furthermore, they're actively utilizing alternative smuggling routes to bypass those blocked ports. Strategically, the CIA also noted that despite the immense economic pressure and continued attacks from the US and Israel, Iran still retains major missile and drone capabilities. Basically, they're battered, but they definitely aren't broken.
And what about those exploding pipelines we talked about earlier? Well, energy experts weighed in on this, and it provides a pretty grounding reality check. They pointed out that modern pipelines don't just spontaneously explode from backed-up pressure like something out of an action movie. They are heavily equipped with safety valves and sensors designed specifically to halt pumping before any kind of failure spirals out of control. If the oil simply can't move through the system and out to sea, operators just stop production at the source.
And because of these safety mechanisms, experts estimate that Iran actually has roughly 2 to 3 months of inland storage capacity. They can literally just store the oil inland before any forced long-term production cuts become absolutely necessary. This perfectly aligns with the CIA's timeline of resilience and, as you can see, sharply contrasts with that narrative of a 3-day mechanical catastrophe.
Which brings us to Section 4, the cat and mouse game. To see who is actually winning this standoff, we really need to shift our focus from Washington and Tehran directly to the logistical battle happening out at sea. Satellite and maritime tracking platforms reveal the true reality on the water. Check this out. Since the blockade went into effect on April 13th, a staggering 4.6 million barrels of oil have been loaded onto Iranian-linked vessels. That single figure highlights the sheer persistence of Iran's export network, despite a very heavy naval presence.
But loading the oil is really only half the battle, right? They still have to get it out. And the data shows that roughly 4 million of those loaded barrels successfully crossed the blockade. 4 million barrels! This absolutely proves that the US strategy, while certainly imposing, is far from airtight. Iran is actively punching holes in Washington's blockade, keeping vital revenue flowing right back into the country.
So the crucial point we have to ask is, how exactly are they moving 4 million barrels past a major naval power? Well, it comes down to a highly complex network of evasion tactics. It's almost like a maritime spy thriller. Iran is frequently disabling or manipulating ship tracking transponders, so their vessels literally just vanish off the map. They conduct complex ship-to-ship transfers of crude oil way out in the open sea. They're completely rerouting vessels through the Arabian Sea and Asian waters to evade detection. And they're relying heavily on covert logistics chains using third-country intermediaries to completely mask the origin of the oil.
This quote from the tracking firm tankertrackers.com perfectly summarizes the whole situation. The blockade has disrupted but not halted Iran's oil activity. Instead of achieving a full, absolute shutdown, the immense pressure has simply forced the maritime traffic into much more complex, opaque, and difficult to monitor routes. It's an ongoing game of adaptation.
Finally, Section 5, the retaliation threat. Now, Iran isn't just passively evading the blockade. They've actually established a highly aggressive official doctrine of response regarding any threats to their infrastructure. Just listen to this incredibly punchy statement from Iran's vice president and head of strategic energy policy, Ismail Sagafi Vahani. Reacting to the U.S. pressure, he stated flatly, "Our math is different. 1 oil well equals 4 oil wells." Wow. It's a stark, unambiguous warning that really sets the stage for exponential retaliation.
Unpacking this 1=4 doctrine, Iran has made an explicit, guaranteed threat. They've stated that if any part of their infrastructure is damaged as a result of the blockade, they will inflict 4 times that damage on the same infrastructure of any countries that support the aggressor. It's a massive deterrent strategy, and it's intended to make the geopolitical cost of fully enforcing the blockade unimaginably high for any U.S. allies in the region. And this is exactly why this matters to you. A disruption of this scale wouldn't just be a localized conflict. It would send global oil prices absolutely skyrocketing, directly impacting economies, supply chains, and consumers worldwide.
So we've seen the 72-hour ultimatums, and we've seen the 120-day intelligence realities. We've seen the naval enforcement, and we've seen the millions of barrels successfully smuggled through shadow fleets. So I want to leave you with this. With the official strategy so heavily contradicted by both leaked intelligence and hard maritime data, who is actually winning this high-stakes cat-and-mouse game at sea? It's a true geopolitical stalemate where the narrative rarely matches the reality, and it's definitely a situation we'll be watching very, very closely. Thank you so much for joining me for this explainer.